Okay, do we need to wait for Dean, probably?
Yeah, he's gonna grab something and we'll be right back.
Okay. We'll be just a minute as we're waiting for Dean, so. But it was like dead silence all of a sudden.
Yeah, and we were scared, you know what to do, and then, yeah, we started getting busier. Yeah, we got big orders from all sorts of people and companies and companies that they were doing. Yeah, so that was nice.
I think so.
Did he give you the high sign yet?
I'm sorry?
Did he give you this high sign?
Yeah, he's ready whenever we are.
Whenever you are ready, we're ready.
Okay, then, we'll go ahead and start the meeting. Call the meeting to order. Dean, I'll have you do roll call and...
Yeah, called to order. The meeting's been called to order by the chair, and we'll call roll. Commissioner or board member Waters.
Here.
Helzer.
Here.
Martins.
Here.
Gillum.
Here.
Patel. Nikesh Patel is absent to today's meeting, but with 4 present for the opening of the meeting, that is a quorum, and that is sufficient to conduct business today. And we can confirm that the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been provided and the information posted, and for the first time since March, we have the public at a public meeting. So
All right.
we're excited about that.
Great. Well, thank you. And I don't believe we have any minutes to approve from the March meeting.
I think I wanted to introduce Margie Long. I was going to explain that a number of city employees are on work share programs, so we're not working full-time every day. Mr. Berger is on furlough for a period of time, so you're stuck with me presenting those reports, and then Margie's going to assist with minutes. And we had that March 12th meeting right before things were shutting down, and just today we were able to find the disc for the meeting, confirm that it was in fact held and that we had a record of it. So we will get those minutes for you in the future, but we do not have them for you today.
Okay, well, thank you. In that case, we'll move right into new business. We have application CC20-3.
And for Dean, for items 3.1 and 3.2, I'll be withdrawing from discussion and voting on those, as those are from Jones Gilliam, but I will be helping Carolyn present for item 3.1.
Okay.
The microphone.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I was just telling Dean that I'll be withdrawing from conversation and voting on items 3.1 and 3.2, as those are both from Jones Gilliam Architects, and I will be helping Carolyn present item 3.1.
So we've just moved the podium slightly, so the speakers who are going to speak from public or for an application will speak over there.
Okay. Do you want me to just wait and sit up here?
Well, you can pull up a chair behind there, or whoever's going to speak next, we can move a chair over there. I had to stand for most of a meeting over there, and it wasn't very comfortable not having a chair to go there, or you could come down and we could give you a chair over there for this item.
I think maybe I'll just go sit by Carolyn for the
Okay.
time being. And then, oh, you can stay there. Okay.
For the remaining board members, this is an application for approval of a certificate of compatibility, and the application is for proposed facade renovations at building addressed as 144 and 146 South Santa Fe. And we didn't have a great deal of information on our files on this building, but we did determine that it was built by Mr. Albert Naylor in 1910, and not surprisingly has historically been referred to as the 18 Naylor building. Its predominantly exterior building materials were porcelain, enameled steel, and brick. It was originally built for and housed Naylor Sporting Goods, and then was later a variety store. And then the building was fairly substantially remodeled in 1955 by Duck Walls, and this was the location of a Duck Walls variety store for 15 years, and then it was later occupied by some other shops and uses. So what Mr. Hers has up there is a photo that was provided from the 1950s of what this block looked like at the time. We did find that there was some failing or falling masonry that occurred during 2017, and there were some emergency repairs that were authorized to this building, and those were approved administratively on an emergency basis. So there haven't been any recent cases with this property coming before the board. But this building is now being renovated. It's historically been retail. It's been renovated to create office and meeting space for the Weedle Financial Group. And the Phase 1 portion of this is interior renovations, and Phase 2 involves rehabilitation and renovation of the exterior storefront. And we've provided for you a summary of the proposed restoration work on page 1 and 2 of your report. And there's also a very nice narrative that was provided by the architect that's at the start of your packet. And because we are within the Business Improvement District, the review and approval of proposed facade renovation is required by this board before any work on the exterior of the building can take place. And we scheduled a public hearing for today's meeting for your review. And I think as we reviewed this in conformance with our design guidelines, I think the only thing that we thought worthy of particular note or to comment on, because it has been a matter of discussion with this board before, relates to color and the painting of masonry. And so basically the design guidelines allow for existing masonry that's been painted to be preserved and protected, but basically discourages the new painting of masonry features. And so it appears, and maybe the applicant confirmed this, that the upper stories were first painted white as part of the 1955 renovation, and those that essentially stayed in place since that time. And so what we've noted in our report is that the design guidelines recommend preservation of character defining features that are intact. And so I think one of our discussion points should be whether the white painted upper story brick has taken on some significance of its own that should be preserved. So policy F2 in our design guidelines says don't cover or obscure original facade materials. Covering of original facades not only conceals interesting detail but also interrupts the visual continuity along the street. If the original material has been covered, expose it if feasible. Do not paint natural colored masonry. However, if masonry was painted historically, then it may be appropriate to repaint. And so, as we've reviewed this, we offer some suggested findings. We do believe that the new storefront doors and windows will be appropriate to the scale, color, and texture of the predominant materials in this block of Santa Fe. We don't think the changes will remove or damage any significant character-defining features on the building. The intact features that we do have in the upper story will be preserved with appropriate maintenance techniques as planned, and the proposed wall signage will be proportional to the facade and will not dominate the appearance of the building. So your options today would be to approve the Certificate of Compatibility as proposed, based on the findings that we provided or any additional findings you wish to make. You could approve the exterior renovation project subject to any conditions approved by a majority of the design review board members. You could postpone consideration to a future meeting date, or you could deny the application as presented upon making findings of fact that support that denial. And so our recommendation would be option 2, with the condition that if there's any significant changes to the proposed renovations as approved, that staff will be notified to determine whether any additional staff or DRB review will be required. And that is primarily there just to reinforce that that you can have an expectation that's what's presented today, and if acted on, will be carried out in the field. So with that, I'd be open to any questions you have. I would say any more detailed questions we'd want to defer to the project architect. But as staff looked at this, there is a desire by the building owner to retain the white painted brick, and so as a general rule, if you have the original brick facade and it has not been altered, the design guidelines discourage covering that, but this has been historically painted white for a long period of time. So with that, I'll address any questions you have for me. Otherwise, we want to hear from the applicant.
So you're saying that she can restore the upper back to white again? Correct.
Well, the guidelines say if masonry was painted historically, then it may be appropriate to repaint. That would be a judgment for you. And it is not prohibited that they cannot paint the lower story and I think part of it has to do with whether you think enough of the original brick facade or original material still exists today. And so if you don't feel that it does, then it's going to be restorative work, then you could look at that differently than whether we had the original masonry that is proposed to be painted.
Go ahead.
But that is, again, these are guidelines. It's just that if we deviate from the guidelines, we should indicate why, because there have been some cases where the board has disapproved painting over exterior brick. So,
when did you say the lower part, the unpainted brick would have been put in, roughly?
well, I'm not sure if that is, it doesn't really look like it's the original
Yeah, it looks like
masonry
it'd be a
material
70s type thing,
by any means. And so
Okay. That's
all our records show was that there was a fairly major renovation that occurred in 1955 with the duck walls taking over the property, and it's our understanding that the upper portion was painted white at that time, but
Okay.
unfortunately we don't have a whole series of photos for every period of time, but it certainly does not appear that that lower portion is what we would call original material.
okay.
So that is, again, the idea is to don't cover or obscure original facade materials, but if that is clearly not original facade materials, then the same considerations do not apply.
Okay.
But we would want to clarify that the material received placed an emphasis on the to repaint the upper portion, but we view one as a repainting, one as a potentially new painting, and so you do have the ability to treat those differently if you wish as a board, but we'd want to hear some of the thoughts and reasoning of the applicant on that. So.
Okay, so would y'all like to speak?
And you can let us know if there's a particular slide or picture you want us to put up. Let us know.
This is fine for now. Maggie Gillum with Jones Gilliam Architects. Just to clarify, the top portion of that building, we were approved to do that work already, to restore that facade. That was approved at the staff level because it was a simple restoration. So if you've driven by lately, it's been done for, I don't know, couple months, I think. So that has all been restored. Basically looks like it does, but a whole lot better. So yeah, the portion of this project that's in question here today is everything from basically the black tar paper and down. And like Dean said, the columns are not original. None of that storefront from the tar paper and down is original. We were thinking that was done sometime in the late 80s or the 90s. Not 100% sure. But yes, we are suggesting to paint those columns white to match what was done to restore the top of the building. Right now, if you covered the top half and covered the lower half, you'd be looking at two totally different buildings. There's just a total disconnect. So we want to, bring the building back to being one cohesive, nice looking facade. So I don't know, could you go to the rendering? Yeah. So, the band of stone that's above the transom windows is there and has been restored as part of that restoration project. So we are going in and putting new transom windows in with another band of stone that matches that portion above the window. And then below, it now has the storefront windows, the brick columns, and then we would go in with a black tile to match the transom tile. Now we've been going through some of our structural stuff, and we've learned that there is no structure basically where that transom is now. There is a large concrete beam that sits above it, but to get our new windows in, we need to put some structure in. So we might actually have to take those brick columns out anyways to get our structure in, but we're going to rebuild them exactly as they are in that same exact profile. So none of the look will change, but we'll probably have to tear them down to get the columns in and then build them back up. So I don't know if you guys have any more questions for me or for the owner.
No.
I don't believe so. Does anybody? No.
And
Thank you, Maggie.
just for clarification of the board, there are certain things that if things are being repaired or existing features are being restored as they were on a repair basis, then those are things that can be reviewed and approved administratively by staff. It is any facade renovation or exterior renovation that changes the exterior look or introduces new materials or colors, which is the reason for bringing it back to you today.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Maggie.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments, questions? No? So, well, I have seen the upper floor, and it does look much nicer than the photos have shown, so it's on the way. So I guess if there's no further discussion or comments from the public, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the certificate of compatibility for the exterior renovations, given that there's any significant changes that they bring it back to us.
I second.
Okay, I have a moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, no opposition, so motion passed. You're welcome. All right, then we're ready for 3.2.
Item 3.2 is also a certificate of compatibility application, and it's been filed by Charles Renz of Jones Gillum Renz Architects. And that filing is on behalf of the Salina Educational Automotive Museum of America. And what you are reviewing this afternoon would be the proposed new infill building and renovation of the facades of existing buildings on the west side of South 4th Street, south of Iron Avenue. And that is the proposed location for, instead of repeating Salina Educational Automotive Museum of America, we're going to call it the Car Museum. And the application is for, if you're familiar today, there is I'll call it formerly public parking lot because it is now owned by the Educational Foundation, was sold by the city, and that location is intended to be the site of a new building that would serve as a lobby for museums. So you can see on the aerial photo, we've got a row of buildings here and then a row of buildings south, and this was the old Images Recycling right here. Before that was referred to as the Boston building, or it was built by Paul Boston in the 1930s and has historically been used for warehousing. And it has some unique look with peaked roofs and false front gables that give it a distinct look. But this had been operating, the Images Recycling Center and Images Printing was located to the south. All of those are vacant. They've all been purchased and acquired to go into the Car Museum. We've provided some summary information there, but this is a project that was part of the Downtown Star Bond project, and part of the Star Bond financing is to try to promote venues that attract tourists or attract visitors to the downtown area, and that is the plan behind the Car Museum, and this is the location selected. So the former city-owned parking lot's 100 foot wide north to south, and the applicant is proposing to insert a building that will basically span that space, and that will serve as the lobby area for the museum. The new addition will have a brick veneer that matches the brick of the existing warehouses. It will also have some precast concrete trim and decorative joint patterns, and there's also a portion that will consist of architectural metal panels. And what they're doing on the other existing buildings would primarily consist of replacement of damaged brick and replacement of existing overhead doors with new aluminum and glass overhead doors. So we hope and think that we have provided you some pretty good graphics in your packet to give you a feel for what is being proposed. And again, this is in the Business Improvement District number 1, and it involves exterior changes. So we set a public hearing for today's date for you to review this request for conformance with our downtown design review guidelines. And some of the recommendations they make are in regard to building mass, scale, and form. A building should appear similar in scale to traditional commercial facades. I think you'll agree that this is certainly similar in scale to the traditional facades facing 4th Street. New materials should be appropriate to the scale, durability, color, and texture of the predominant materials. Orient the primary entrance of the building towards the street. A building should have a clearly defined primary entrance, and that is provided here. use colors to create a coordinated color scheme for a building. And so we think that important thing to recognize here is that it's not the intent, solely the intent of the design guidelines that new construction should appear to be old. The intent is not to freeze an area in time, but to encourage new buildings to fit in the context in which they're located. And so this, we don't think they're introducing a false historic structure here. There is a real effort to harmonize and reinforce the pattern that's already there on 4th Street. And your alternatives would be to approve the certificate of compatibility as proposed. You could approve it subject to any conditions you think are appropriate. You could postpone consideration of this application to a future meeting date, or you could deny the application as it's been presented and make findings of fact that would support that denial. Our recommendation would be following review of the application and any additional information presented by the applicant would be to select option 2, which would be to approve the application with the stipulation that, again, if there's any significant changes to the design or materials as you have approved them, that staff would be notified, and we would look to see whether that change could be approved administratively or so dramatic that we would need to bring it back to you for further review. So with that, this is a case where the graphics provided speak louder probably than our staff report. But I think the only thing we would point out is that there is a proposal to use architectural metal panels in the portion of the new construction, and we just wanted to call that to your attention. It will not be 100% masonry facade. So with that, I'll answer any questions you have from the standpoint of our staff report, but anything about the museum operation or more details about the project, I would defer to Mr. Renz.
Where would those panels be? I guess I'm not seeing them.
I don't know if we can zoom in on that, Dustin, or maybe if you just put that one back, I'll point to it. So it shows up more on a more close-up picture, but it would be this section right here, and that's the 4th Street view. But if you want to scroll back, Dustin, to that view you had, but it's this area here.
So a breezeway.
Yes.
Okay.
With
enclosed.
glass with architectural panels, so that portion would not be a masonry facade, and we just wanted to call that out to your attention.
Okay.
Is that the main entrance? The new building is the main entrance?
It's my understanding that there will be entrances on both sides, and I'll defer. There will be more parking available on the 5th Street side than the 4th Street side, and that one there, is that the 5th Street entrance, Dustin? Does it say at the bottom?
Yes, this is the 5th Street, I believe. We can go.
That's 5th Street. That's the parking lot side.
This gives you both the parking lot side and 5th Street views, the east and west elevations. So the top is the east and the bottom is the west.
If some of the plans and visions for the river renewal project occur, there would be somewhat of a public plaza that would be on the other side of 4th Street, between 4th Street and the river, and so that would provide an entrance on that side. But it's my understanding that some of this parking will be retained, and that the orientation would be an entrance here, and that most of the public parking is available on this side or over here. So I think most visitors may enter on the 5th Street side due to parking.
Okay.
4th Street's not ideal for parking space.
Not currently, anyways. Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments?
I do not.
Did you all want to speak about the project? Yeah.
And let us know if there's a particular image or slide you want up there, Charles.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Charles Renz with Jones Gillum Renz Architects, so I appreciate you allowing us to be here today to go over this. Dean's summary was overall accurate. One thing I would clarify is that from the time this rendering was prepared, the museum board, they did acquire this building right here. Okay, so we actually have a sixth, we have the first, we call 4 buildings, and then these 2 buildings to the south right here. So we've accumulated about another 6,000 square feet of building right there. The style of that building is the same as all the other buildings along the lot right there. Our intent for how we treat that is the same. It'll primarily be a new glass overhead door will really be the main feature of that bay, or a new overhead door at that bay. So it will be consistent. It's currently consistent with the other buildings, and we are maintaining that. You asked about the architectural metal panel. I think there were some examples in your packet of just places where we've used it before. So it's just kind of a cool looking metal panel with the tight horizontal ribs, similar to what you see at South High. You see it at Central High, Gourmet to Go, Central, or the football stadium at Central High. So it is pretty commonly used, and it is in this area right here. One other small change is we made that little section of wall about 2 feet taller than it shows right there. We did that just with all the mechanical equipment. The mechanical equipment got big. And so we just to do a little bit more to try to screen that, from the plaza area. We tried to do the best that we can with that. The intent with that glass area, that breezeway, that's sort of we call it kind of that teaser space. So those, walking by, you kind of get a glimpse. There'll be 2 very nice cars. You can see, here's an image of that from the inside, but 2 nice cars in that area right there that just give people a glimpse in there, and at night those being lit up, and just a nice feature. And we think that black panel creates a really nice tie-in there too. And in some cases, when you have old brick and new brick, you see that little bit of difference. And so again, for that transition between the old and the new, we just felt like that was a nice kind of a little bit of a modern look on that, with all that historical tie-in, and just creates a nice way to feature that addition. So otherwise, our intent was to go in and match the existing materials, the existing style as much as we can, really retain the historic features of that area. So we think it's a very exciting project, and hope that you agree. So.
I guess just curiosity, nothing to do with approval, but what's the time frame for this?
The time frame is they've got a demo permit to start doing some demolition on the inside, and it's in for building permit review now. We kind of delayed this process a little bit because we were working on the acquisition of that last building, and so not knowing exactly where that was, and that came up for us here this winter, where that became available. So actually, it is pretty cool. We've got the more of your traditional, restored cars, historical cars, and just in that north area. That south area, Custom Kemp's has got some involvement with that. So Custom Kemp's will be involved in a portion of this with a lot of their specialty vehicles and stuff that go in there. So it's 2 really. That'll be just a really neat draw, I think, with the car show here and the following that they have. So, time frame is, hopefully you see stuff happening very shortly, within the month.
Great. Anybody else have any comments, questions?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, sorry, Charles, but just on this item here, the floor plan, are you saying that there's actually an additional storefront here south of what's shown on the floor plan, or is this the southernmost building?
There is one more building. You asked me for the previous rendering, and
Yeah.
what I submitted was the current plan, and you had said that was kind of difficult to read.
Not as clear as the early,
Yeah,
so,
when I sent you this one, I guess I was focusing more on everything that
Right.
you're doing in the middle as I
So-
sent that. But I believe in the packet, I know at least on the elevations that are included in the packet, you can see that, you see that additional building in the working drawings that are included.
So as clarification, we're approving the piece you can't
yeah,
see, right?
you're
It's-
not,
it's
you're
just gonna
not
be
approving the floor plan, but you're approving
seeing
the
the
elevation
extra building
for
there,
this.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
And so
clarify.
some of the earlier renderings that we had received, I thought were clearer for the board's review, so I asked Charles to resend those, but not, so I chose clarity over
That's good.
being up to date. But I just
That's
wanted to
fine.
clarify for the board that when we're showing that floor plan, it's short of one storefront
Okay.
as far as the
Okay.
area. So it's actually goes south another 50 feet from the floor plan that I put in the packet.
The wall detailing, everything is the same throughout that building, so,
Okay. Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Any further discussion or questions?
Nope.
Any public comments? Then I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Okay, I move that we approve this application with the caveat that if there's any significant changes, that they be brought back to the staff for review.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All right, have a move and a second. Any further discussion? Then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous, so approved. Thank you. Thank you.
We'll let Ms. Gillum rejoin the board if she'd like. That takes care of our certificate of appropriateness applications. And then for your consideration, we have 2 Sidewalk Cafe license applications. And rather than repeating that each time, we did attach to the first report just a background report about the sidewalk dining ordinance, but the ordinance was first passed in 2014. It has been some amendments made in 2018. We're looking at modifying it again to look at making the renewal process a little clearer and smoother than it is now. This board has reviewed and approved plans for, there's already some outdoor dining at Old Chicago, but they did have a plan to move out onto the sidewalk with some dining area. They have not constructed that. You have reviewed and approved a sidewalk dining area for Blue Sky Brewery, and you have reviewed and approved one for a plaza dining area on Strand Plaza for Barolo Grill. And so we are back on Santa Fe with the request to establish a sidewalk dining area in front of Martinelli's Little Italy. And we have provided in your packet the written permission of Mr. Chuck Carroll, who is the owner of the building. This is already a licensed food service establishment, and the business already has a liability and property insurance for the area. And so our submittal requirements are to have a signed application, to pay the initial application fee, to provide a copy of a food service establishment license, certification that you have liability insurance in place for an existing building, copies of retail sales and alcohol beverage sales, a site plan indicating the proposed location for the outdoor dining area, information about tables and chairs, and fence designs. And we just wanted to remind the board that in order to be eligible for a sidewalk dining area, a business must have a food service license, and at least 30% of their gross sales receipts must be from food. So a establishment that is just a bar and doesn't have a kitchen or any food service they cannot have a sidewalk dining or cafe area. So based on our checklist and review of items, we attempted to schedule this meeting, but due to health concerns about COVID-19 and the general cancellation of public meetings, this item could not be scheduled for a hearing until today, which is the first meeting you've had since March 12th. So your role today is to conduct a public hearing on this application, and you are making a recommendation to the City Commission that the proposed sidewalk dining area would conform or would not conform with the city's license requirements. So Martinelli's has been at this location since 2001. They're proposing to establish a roughly 8-foot by 25-foot fenced-in sidewalk dining area on the sidewalk in front of the building along South Santa Fe. This is permitted, however, in order to have permanent seating and to serve alcoholic beverages, the dining area must be enclosed or fenced in. And this can only be done through a license agreement approved by the City Commission. And again, by way of clarification, state law prohibits the serving or consumption of alcoholic beverages in the public right-of-way. And this is the public right-of-way for Santa Fe. But what the state has allowed is that if the city turns over the right-of-way through a formal license agreement to a private establishment, then the state treats that area as having been turned over to the establishment and not being part of the public right-of-way. And that is the reason for the fenced-in enclosure, because the fenced-in enclosure defines that area in which alcoholic beverages can be served and consumed, and outside the fenced area they cannot be served or consumed. So that is the importance of that. The ordinance we currently have in place has a 200 square foot size limitation, but does have provisions that allow the City Commission to approve a larger area. And I think the Blue Sky area was smaller than 200 square feet. All the others that you have reviewed have been larger than 200 square feet, and we're taking a look at that to see if the 200 square feet or the way that that is worded might be overly restrictive. But we're talking about an area that would extend out 7 feet 9 inches from the east wall and extend 25 feet 9 inches in total length. The proposal is to have 4 tables and 16 chairs. I did want to point out that they're proposing a 3-foot tall metal fence to act as the perimeter. There is 16 feet between the Martinelli's building and Santa Fe, and the site plan does not indicate any planters or other physical obstructions around the sidewalk dining area. However, we went out and looked at it, and Public Works went out. There is an existing light pole, and that is considered to be a physical obstruction, and the minimum path of travel that must be maintained on a sidewalk or plaza is 6 feet. So that means, from our perspective, that as proposed, the dining area would need to be shifted to the south approximately 3 feet in order to maintain the 6-foot sidewalk clearance between the fence and the dining area and the existing light pole. And so you are to review the site plan layout, you're to review the location as it relates to physical obstructions, you are to review the required separation barrier, look at its heights, design, materials, how it would be anchored. They're proposing a 3-foot tall rod style fence that would be black colored aluminum rods. That will define the perimeter of the serving area. It will serve as a separation barrier between the sidewalk dining area and the sidewalk. One of the things that's important is the ability to disassemble and remove the barrier. Should a business close, should a business relocate, it is desirable that the barrier can be disassembled and removed without damage to the sidewalk. And they are proposing a post support brackets that would be a square plate that would sit on top of the sidewalk surface flush with the paving. And this means that no large screws need to be drilled into the sidewalk in order to support the fence posts. And the fence and fence posts could be removed without leaving large holes in the sidewalk. So we think that that's a desirable system that's being proposed. They've provided catalog cut sheets for their table, and they're looking at black powder-coated aluminum with synthetic teak tabletops. And the tables would be 24 inches wide, 32 inches long, with 16 matching chairs, which would be made of the same material. The materials that are being looked at appear that they are designed for outdoor use and would be durable and maintainable. That we can tell, we don't see any specialty lighting fixtures being proposed. There is the ability to have background music on a patio, but it has to be very soft background music, and couldn't have live bands or any kind of amplified sound in the outdoor dining area. We don't see any internal or external heating features on the plan. There's an existing signs on Santa Fe, and we don't see any plan to add or change those. There's an existing canopy that extends over this area, and that would be maintained. As far as parking and trash removal, the primary parking areas for Martinelli's are the areas to the south and west in public lots. There's also on-street parking on Santa Fe available, and there is a common trash enclosure for Martinelli's that's located in the parking lot west of the building. We have cut sheets provided to you for the dining tables and dining chairs. So the review process is the application is filed with city staff. It's referred to me to review and comment on. Based on recommendations that you make, there's an actual written agreement that is prepared, and that agreement authorizes the placement of private improvements in the public right-of-way. The sidewalk cafe license agreement can be renewed in subsequent years. As it is now, the ordinance is set up so that you would review the renewal of applications. I think there's some thought on city staff's part to perhaps make that renewal administrative, and then it would only be brought back to this body if there had been complaints received or there were questions about a renewal, because it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to bring a routine renewal back to this board. But we will look at that, and then there's also, should an application not be renewed, that non-renewal can be appealed to the City Commission. So we are responsible as a staff for coordinating compliance and monitoring conditions at each of the locations. So you are reviewing this as a design review board. You are making a recommendation to the City Commission, and you are to look at whether the cafe license agreement would comply with all the provisions of the ordinance and regulations, whether you think this dining area will contribute to the welfare of the public by adding to the vibrancy and appeal of South Santa Fe, whether you think this plan would cause injury to the value of other property on this block, and do you think that this dining area will create any obstructions or impede pedestrian traffic. So we have reviewed this application. We don't think any additional information is needed. We wanted to point out that we do require quite a bit of detail, because if a license agreement is voted on and approved, that actually authorizes the improvements to be made, and therefore it's important to know what all those improvements are. At this point in time before any work proceeds. So you could vote to make a recommendation to the City Commission to approve this proposed license agreement. You could make a recommendation to approve it subject to conditions or modifications. You could postpone consideration, or you could recommend that it be denied. Our recommendation would be option number 2, to approve the application with the condition that the cafe be shifted south to preserve a 6-foot clearance between the dining area fencing and the existing light pole near the northeast corner of that. So again, we've been out and looked at that, and we think that if it's shifted 3.5 feet to the south or reduced in length by 3.5 feet, it will comply with all the regulations adopted by the city. There's 65 feet of total frontage on Santa Fe, and this would occupy a little over 25 feet of that. It will be separated from the public sidewalk. We think that this dining area will contribute to the vibrancy of the 100 block of South Santa Fe. We don't see this causing any injury to neighboring properties, and if it is shifted 3.5 feet to the south, then we don't think that it will impede pedestrian traffic on South Santa Fe. So with that, we'll be open to any questions, or we could go back to any slides that you think are relevant that you'd like to look at more closely.
Comments or questions from anybody on the commission? All right. Did Phil or Tony, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Slide reflects the shift south.
And so y'all are aware of that and agreeable to the, okay, all right. All right, then. Any other comments you'd like to make? Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, then. Well, no comments, questions?
I guess the only other question I have for you is, did you get a chance to read through the other 8 comments that the city had made in regards to, I guess it's various things they want to be considered in your license agreement? Did you read through that? Okay. And you didn't have any issue with any of the items that
Okay.
were listed?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Phil, I should have asked you to step up to the podium. I'm sorry about that.
I should know better.
Well, they moved it, so now we're confused.
I thought I was just going to say that one comment. First of all, for the record, we shifted south as requested. So one of the comments was about a gate, and I sent the staff 2 versions, one with a gate, one without. There was a question of whether that's what the state actually requires.
And
Martinelli's has no problem one way or the other with putting a gate in, so that's...
I will confirm that, but the way the regulation reads it, it says enclosed on all sides that abut the public sidewalk, so that has been interpreted to mean either the fencing or a gate in the fence, but not, it would, if you had it open at both ends, it would kind of defeat the purpose of having the barrier from the sidewalk. So that is our understanding, but when we get to the final design and installation, we will clarify that, but it's our belief that it has to be enclosed on all 3 sides, but obviously you have to have a gate for access.
And there is an enclosure on the north side. It just wasn't obvious before, so.
Okay.
We aren't sure if the gate can go both ways either. That was another question, so.
Usually has to swing out for egress reasons.
sorry?
It usually needs to swing out for egress reasons.
That would be an obvious one. It seems like then there's the issue of people going in with trays of food, so
Yeah.
if it could go both ways, it seems like that would solve the problem, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, the reason for the outward swinging gate is for exiting for emergency or fire or other purposes. The reason for the gate in the state's mind is just they're creating a situation where they're carving out part of the public space and giving it to a private entity, and in their verbiage, it's supposed to be separated from the public sidewalk. And so I will confirm that from the standpoint of the alcohol beverage control.
And the staff will remain in touch with us, right, to let us
Yes.
know what you, okay. Yeah, we're good.
But those items on page 8 that are listed as conditions, those are existing, those are not really suggestions, they are requirements that are already written into the city code, and they're just there to reinforce and remind that those are existing requirements. And one of those is that the sidewalk cafe cannot be open or operate if the kitchen is closed. So you can't close the kitchen at 8 p.m. and serve out on the area till midnight. So.
And anybody goes in there at 1 minute before they close, you're still able to eat for the next.
Okay, so any other comments? Anything you'd like to add? Phil? No? All right. If not, I think we're ready to accept a motion from someone.
I move we accept this application with staff's recommendation on option number 2. Also that the cafe be shifted south to preserve the 6 feet clearance, and that if there are any significant changes, to bring them back to the staff.
I'll second that.
Was that option 2 that you were
Yes.
referencing? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and Haley, you seconded. Okay, from second, any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? It's approved. Thank you.
So for your benefit, Phil and Tony, what happens is this recommendation goes to the city commission. There'll be a written agreement put together. That written agreement will be sent to you to review, and then after you've reviewed it, it will go on the commission's agenda. But there'll actually be a signed agreement between Tony and the city of Salina.
Does Chuck have to sign it too or not?
No, just Tony. He's the operator.
Thank you.
All right, then we're ready for, let's see, 3.4.
So item 3.4 is our second sidewalk dining area, and this one is different in street as being on Iron Avenue. It's also different in character from the standpoint that there is no fencing or anything proposed, nor is it required, because there's no intention or desire to serve alcoholic beverages. So again, the reason for the fence and the barrier is the fact that state law prohibits the consumption of and sale of alcoholic beverages on public right-of-way, and the license agreement is an exception that allows for that, but the fence and barrier is not necessary if you are not an establishment that wishes to serve alcohol. And so it was not a question whether Dagney's was a food service establishment. They have a license. We don't need to look at their tax receipts to see what their alcohol sales are or any of those things. So your role is to do the same thing, conduct a public hearing, make a recommendation to the city commission whether this would conform or not conform with the sidewalk cafe license requirements. So Ken and Dagney Stromberg own this building. It occupies the south half of Lot 7. The building's located at the corner of Santa Fe and Iron. Santa Fe storefront is addressed as 100 North Santa Fe, and that's occupied by Gentle Touch Chiropractic Practice. In 2016, Stromberg's remodeled a portion of the building to create an ice cream parlor. A new entryway was created on the south side of the building facing Iron, and therefore the ice cream parlor is addressed as 105 East Iron. In 2017, Dagney's received a movable outdoor furniture permit to set 2 benches on the public sidewalk in front of the shop. They now wish to place permanent customer seating on the public sidewalk on Iron in front of the building. They have submitted this application and their plans to place 4 picnic tables on the sidewalk in front of their ice cream shop. Tables would be evenly distributed along the frontage. So the ice cream shop is, the doorway is here, but the tables are spread throughout, so they're not all concentrated just in front of the shop. And so the plan that has been submitted depicts the location dimensions of the sidewalk seating area. There's 4 tables. As we measure them, the tables and benches would occupy or displace about a 7 by 7 foot area adjacent to the curb line. We've measured the 15.5 feet from the face of the building to the back of the curb on Iron. If you just don't look at the gaps in between, but if you just look at the space that the 4 tables are physically occupying, that would occupy 196 square feet of area on the sidewalk. And I believe we know the answer to this, but we are requesting that the applicant clarify whether the existing movable benches will remain in place or be removed. And we ask that primarily to look, just looking at the path of travel, that you have 15.5 feet between the building and curb. We measure from the face of the building, but if you have a bench there, then that does narrow the path of travel. So we'd want to confirm that. It doesn't impact the ability to have the tables, but it just clarifies what our path of travel is. The westernmost table would be located west of an existing mailbox and planter. The second table would be located between the eastern edge of the planter and a new trash can. We were a little unclear whether that was an existing or proposed trash can. At this point, it's a proposed trash can. The other 2 tables would be located in front of the ice cream shop. And the one thing we wanted to point out in terms of the location in relation to the curb line, and it's just something for the Strombergs to consider as they look at final placement, but there was a change to the parking on Iron, and instead of parallel parking, you have head-end parking. And when you have angled head-end parking, you have a certain portion of the vehicle that will overhang the curb in some locations. And so if you set the table right at the curb line, you run the risk of having a conflict or possible damage to tables from cars heading in. So we think that just needs to be looked at to make sure that the benches on the tables are far enough north of the curb line or back of curb to make sure that there's not a conflict with parked vehicles. Again, there's no serving of alcoholic beverages. There's no barrier fence to be considered. We don't have to worry about how the barrier is attached to the sidewalk. There is a plan to anchor the tables to the sidewalk. We've had the city engineer review those, and the city engineer has indicated that using the anchoring system recommended by the table manufacturer is acceptable to Public Works and Engineering. And so you have cut sheets and catalog cut sheets for those tables. They're going to be heavy gauge plastic coated steel with high gloss UV coated finish. And the one of the tables is designed to be ADA accessible. We don't see any plan for specialty lighting. We didn't see any plan that related to having outdoor sound, but background music is permitted. It just has to be limited in volume. There's an existing wall sign that was approved by this board in 2017. We didn't see any proposal for any additional signs at this time. One of the things we noted, and I think you have a slide for that, Dustin, but in my report I indicated that No umbrellas or canopies are proposed for the outdoor seating area. But in discussing it further with some folks in the downtown area, they thought that given the location and how it sits, that it might be beneficial to have umbrellas with the tables. And umbrellas are not an issue unless the umbrella it far exceeds the diameter of the table and extends into pedestrian walkways. Then we have to look at heights and things like that. But this, these will be set over the, will these be set in the tables or, yeah, so that they'll be, as you see the slot there, and they can speak to it further, but as we could tell, these are fiberglass umbrellas, not fabric umbrellas, because even in the downtown area, there can be some good wind speeds in that exposed location, and so they're looking for something that will stand up and be durable to any of Salina's winds. And so again, the review process is the applications are filed with the planning division. They're referred to me for review and comment. I review them for completion, and we feel that we have a complete submittal for your consideration today. We would coordinate making sure the plans get carried out as you approve them, and your recommendations to be based on whether you think this sidewalk dining area would comply with applicable provisions of our ordinance and regulations. Do you think this will contribute to the welfare of the public by increasing the vibrancy and appeal of the downtown area? Do you think this will cause substantial injury to neighboring properties as proposed? Do you think this will impede or unreasonably impede pedestrian traffic? We didn't find any of those things to be the case, and your options again are to recommend to the City Commission that this be approved, recommend that it be approved subject to certain conditions, postpone consideration, or deny the application. We just had some recommended conditions on page 8 of the report, and we're not specifying a distance like we did in the other case, but it was our recommendation that the tables be shifted slightly to the north just to make sure there's enough clearance from parked vehicles overhanging the curb line. None of the tables as proposed or benches are going to block entrances or exits, and we will work with the Strombergs, with the Public Works and Engineering. It's our understanding they have some unused trash cans that have not been placed out on the street, and it seems like this is an ideal location for one, to have these 4 tables there, have a place for people to get up and deposit their trash. Again, this is all outdoor rated furniture, and we don't see any way that this would cause injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood in which this is located. So with that, our finding is that as submitted, this complies with the city's guidelines, and we would recommend option 2 to approve with conditions.
Okay, just a question. You asked about the benches that are currently there?
Yes.
If they remain there, it still shouldn't cause any
Right.
distancing
It will
problems,
not.
right?
We just wanted to clarify that when we say there's 15.5 feet, we're measuring
Okay.
from the face
So, right.
of the building, and we're not, we didn't assume or not assume, but the fact that the benches are there and stick out about 2 feet does not impede pedestrian travel.
Okay.
So,
They are fixed. That was required, and the bolts were
Dagney.
Actually, if you wanted to go on up to the,
Okay.
The benches, when they were originally installed, are fixed to the ground, and the bolts that were required by city engineering. So that was from the beginning. They would be very difficult to remove.
okay.
All right, that's good.
So-
Would you like, since you're up there, did you have any other
Yeah.
comments you'd like to make, or?
Yeah, I'll make a couple. Ken's got his
Ken,
list,
you
but
can go
I'll
up and
talk, I'll
join her
talk to
down.
the umbrellas because I'm the granddaughter of a founder of a patio umbrella factory. It is a fabric umbrella. 20, 30 years ago, a patio umbrella would not survive in this environment. Since we sold the patio umbrella factory back in the 80s, and when one of the city engineers said, well, you should have patio umbrellas on it, it's in the report. And I kind of went, that's not going to happen. They'll just blow away, become airborne. It'll be a huge problem. Since then, they've started using carbon fiber in the ribs. So now the wind can bend them, but they'll bend back. Used to be aluminum wire that was extruded and then wound to make the hinges. So that's different. And now they put vents in them so that they can allow the air to move through them. The heat can escape through the top. And we're looking at a double vent fabric one. They will not be able to be out there on all days. They are rated for about 50 miles an hour. If I'm questioning if that's going to be a safe thing, they will not be put out that day. My mother, when I said they want to put patio umbrellas, my mom's like, because it was her father who had the factory, and she's like, you can't do that. And my dad, who worked for the factory, said, you can't do that because even the pole would bend in that type of wind. So these are rated for the wind. They will be fabric. But they won't be out every day. And in January when it's 70 degrees, you're like, please give me some sun. So that's what we're looking at. Ken has drew up the engineering and has all of that for you. And kind of the reasoning why we have fixed tables, because there's actually a reason for that.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to? Sir?
Ian, Ken Stromberg, and thank you for listening to us today. With respect to the recommendations from staff, as far as moving the tables inboard, we have no issue with that. Right now, if you look at the dimensions, the only tightest dimension is between the edge of the bench and that table, but even by moving it in, we still have more than 6 feet. So, and that's an angled dimension, not a...
And we weren't positive we could tell, what the exact distance is between the back of the curb and where the bench would be, but staff just thought it should be looked at because our observation is that a lot of people bring their cars right up to the curb and...
Yeah, and that's a valid, very valid observation, and I can agree with that, so no problem at all with that. The other things, of course, we talked about the anchors were a question, and we're using the 316 stainless anchors that was recommended by the city engineer, so...
Yeah, and we referred those to Mr. Stack, and he responded back that he was good with those, so...
So, good. So that's really the only other consideration that we're talking about is because of the varying slope of the sidewalk, we will have some machined aluminum spacers under them to level them along the, because every location has a different angle. So, got to do some custom work there.
So was all the sidewalk in this block replaced, or was some of it not replaced?
Right next to the building was left alone. Every section outboard from the building is new.
Okay.
So there were also 2 vaults that are still there underneath, and they were filled in with about 3 feet of concrete and rebar. So they're still under there as well. Okay. Any other questions?
Any other questions, anyone?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right. Any further discussion, comments, questions? If not, it's time for a motion then.
I move we make a recommendation to the city commission to approve the application along the lines of option 2 that staff has given us with all of their 8 conditions.
Okay,
I second.
and Carla seconds. All right, if no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye, all right. Opposed? I think we got it all unanimous, okay, all right.
So I'll say the same thing. We'll take today's recommendation, we'll turn it into a written rights and responsibilities agreement. We'll send that to you to review and look over. If you're comfortable with everything in it, we'll put it in front of the city commission, and they will vote on an actual agreement between the city and Dagney's Ice Cream. So, all right, thanks. We'll keep you informed.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we have any administrative items, or?
I think the primary administrative item is we took an item to the city commission, and just for benefit of the board members, the city offices are open 4 days a week out of 5 and closed on Friday. Staff is on a work share schedule. So, for instance, Mr. Hers works 3 days a week. I think Margie works 3 of the 4 days a week. I work 4 of the 4 days a week. Mr. Berger is on furlough. We have a number of other people on furlough. And so because of that, we went to the city commission and adjusted the board and meeting schedule. And so we've adjusted the schedule so that each board will meet once a month. And so your new schedule will be that the board will meet on the first Thursday of each month, and the second Thursday of each month, and not on the fourth Thursday.
So say that again,
So
meet the first one
the
only?
second, your first meeting, scheduled meeting on your published schedule, which is the second Thursday of each month, then you're supposed to also have meetings the fourth Thursday of each month. That fourth Thursday of each month, meetings will not
occur, right? So just the one time.
So one meeting in June, one meeting in July, one meeting in August, through the rest of this calendar year till we revisit that. So for your benefit, we're not going to send you a meeting cancellation notice for the second meeting in the month because it's been taken off the schedule. So for our purposes, the way we remember it is the Planning Commission's going to meet the first week of each month. The DRB is going to meet the second week of each month. The Board of Zoning Appeals is going to meet the third week of each month. And so that way, we're not getting meetings stacked on top of each other. So if we had a situation where we had, and we have had, and we're not even working on Fridays, but we've had cases on Fridays where we have been trying to put out a Planning Commission agenda, Board of Zoning Appeals agenda, and a Design Review Board agenda all on the same day. And because of the reduced hours and staffing, we can't rise to that level. So we're gonna, you may have something like today where you have 4 items on the agenda as opposed to maybe 1 item and then 1 item on the next agenda. So you could have a little bit longer agendas, but you'll have fewer meetings and more free time later in the month. So that's going to be the schedule through the rest of the year, and we will get that schedule sent to you. And then we did want to make sure that you recognized Margie Long and her name. If she contacts you and you're unfamiliar with that, don't treat it as spam or ignore it. She's legit. So
All right.
that is our main administrative business, and I cannot tell you at this time whether we will meet in July. We don't have any pending applications at this time. Ms. Gillum was very patient with her application because the way the schedule was set, she should have had a hearing much sooner than this, but this was as we were reshuffling the schedules, this was the first DRB meeting that we had under the new schedule. So again, I think you may have slightly larger agendas, but just count on that second Thursday, and you'll either get a packet or you'll get a notice from Margie saying no agenda items, no meeting. But
Okay. We don't appear to have anyone here to speak from the public. If there's no other items, I'll call the meeting adjourned. Okay. Or do we need a motion?
we will
need a motion.
review the records and see if you actually did vote chairs and vice chairs, and then Margie and I will get together and update our records. But I have the roster right here from January, and all your information's on there, and it's got Gary Martin's vice chair and no other officers, so.
You remember that, right?
We'll check
Okay,
to see.
We'll be
if-
pretty sure. Yeah. we're-
No, that would have been back in
Yeah.
September,
Well,
right? When we,
Well,
Yeah, September was that's when we have our annual business meetings. That's
But-
when we had our study session in the room
But I
next
think-
door.
After that,
It was
it was
after
because
that.
Tom.
Okay.
It was when Tom
right?
was stepping
Tom
down.
was
Yeah.
voted in, and then, of course, he left, and then, so I think it was the next meeting or
next
so after
meeting.
Tom left that we had the
Okay. Well,
election, so.
John
So
can be
it's-
kind of
it's out there
sneaky that
somewhere.
way, so I'll.
Otherwise, I don't care. I can still be vice chair. It doesn't matter.
Okay. Doesn't matter, you're going to sit in that spot till somebody replaces you. so-
Unfortunately, yeah. Or,
Dean
well, it's
says
not bad.
so.
I guess.
Okay. but
All right,
we
well,
have-
then I guess we
we have no further business, but we will clarify that before the next meeting, whether you are chair or a vice chair.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess, do we need a motion, don't we, or not?
Yeah, if you
Okay,
someone
I
wants
have
to make a motion to
I'll make a
adjourn, and
motion we
Margie
adjourn.
can record that.
second.
For, moving second, all in favor? Or say aye.
Aye.
All right.